Have you ever held on to faith when the world gave you every reason to let go? This is the story of Emma Clarke in The Gift of Fire. The lecture hall smelled faintly of chalk and coffee, an ordinary morning at Westbridge University. Rows of students leaned over their laptops, the low hum of whispered conversations rising like a tide, until the doors swung open and Professor Adrian Cole stepped in. His reputation preceded him, sharp, eloquent, and unflinching when it came to dismantling ideas he considered fragile. "Good morning, everyone," he began, setting his papers down with the soft thud of finality. "Today we'll discuss faith and reason." A few students exchanged knowing smiles. This was his favorite battleground. At the back of the room, Emma Clarke adjusted her notebook, her pulse quickening. She wasn't planning to speak. She rarely did. Her faith was quiet, anchored deep, invisible until tested. Professor Cole's voice cut through the silence. "Let's start with a question." He turned, eyes glinting. "Can belief in God be considered rational in a scientific world?" A murmur rippled through the room. Hands shot up, among them Lucas Gray's. His confidence was magnetic, his words smooth as glass. "It can't," he declared when called upon. "Belief in God is an emotional crutch, something people use to make sense of what they fear." Laughter rolled across the hall like a wave. Professor Cole smiled approvingly. "An interesting point. Anyone care to disagree?" Silence. Emma stared at her open notebook. The verse she had scribbled that morning seemed to stare back at her. "Be ready to give an answer for the hope that is in you." Her chest tightened. She could stay silent, as always, or stand. Her chair scraped softly against the floor. Her voice trembled, barely audible. "I believe faith isn't against reason, it's beyond it. Reason explains the how, faith explains the why." The room went still. Then Lucas turned, smirking. "So you're saying faith fills in the gaps when science doesn't give you what you want?" Emma swallowed. "No, I'm saying faith gives meaning even when science explains everything." A pause. A few students exchanged glances. Then Lucas laughed, a single, sharp sound that broke the fragile air. "That's poetic, but delusional." More laughter. Phones appeared. Someone whispered, "She's the church girl, right?" Emma felt her cheeks burn. Every instinct told her to defend herself, but another voice, quiet and steady, whispered through her mind, "Bless those who persecute you." She sat down, eyes fixed on her notes. The laughter lingered, echoing like a cruel chorus. Professor Cole cleared his throat, steering the discussion onward. But Emma barely heard him. Her thoughts were a blur of humiliation and silent prayers. "Lord, please, help me love them, even now." When class ended, students poured out, still chuckling. Lucas and his friends lingered near the door. "She's sweet, but she really thinks she's got divine Wi-Fi." Lucas grinned. "Faith is a fairy tale for adults." Emma passed them quietly, clutching her books, eyes down. A few whispered comments followed her down the hall. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. Outside, the autumn air bit at her face. She found a quiet bench beneath the maple trees and sat, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The world seemed indifferent, the laughter distant now, but heavy in her heart. Her phone buzzed, a message from her father. "Morning, sunshine. Remember, grace isn't weakness. It's the sound of Christ in a broken world." She smiled faintly through her tears. Somewhere between pain and peace, she whispered, "Then help me sound like you, Lord." As leaves fell around her like quiet confessions, Emma made a silent vow. She would not fight mockery with anger, nor respond to cruelty with bitterness. If her faith was to mean anything, it had to breathe even in ridicule. And though the world had laughed that morning, heaven had listened. By the next morning, the laughter had grown legs. A video clip from the debate was already circulating online, edited with mocking captions and laughing emojis. Someone had titled it, "The Girl Who Tried to Outsmart Science with Jesus." It had over 300,000 views by noon. In the crowded cafeteria, whispers trailed Emma like a shadow. There she is, faith girl, God's little philosopher. Every laugh seemed louder than the last, every side glance sharper. She carried her tray quietly to an empty table, her appetite gone. Across the room, Sarah Miller, her roommate, caught sight of her and hesitated. Sarah wasn't cruel, just afraid of standing in the line of fire. After a moment's pause, she made her way over. "Em," she said softly, sliding into the seat, "ignore them. They'll move on in a few days." Emma gave a faint smile. "Maybe, but it's not me they're laughing at, Sarah. It's him." Sarah sighed, stirring her soup. I don't understand how you stay so calm. I'd lose it." "I almost did," Emma admitted. "But last night I prayed and something inside me just settled. Like peace walked in and told fear to leave." Sarah studied her. "You're unreal sometimes." Emma smiled again, but there was sadness in it. "No, just trying to be faithful in a world that doesn't understand faith." That evening, the laughter found her again, this time outside her dorm. As she approached, she noticed a group of students gathered near the steps. Lucas was among them. "Hey, Clarke," he called out, smirking. "Got any prayers for us tonight? Maybe one that improves our Wi-Fi signal?" The group laughed. Someone added, "Yeah, maybe she can pray for passing grades." Emma froze mid-step. For a moment, she wanted to disappear or shout back just once, but her father's words lingered in her memory. Grace isn't weakness, it's the sound of Christ in a broken world. She took a breath and faced them. Her voice was steady, quiet, but it carried. "I already pray for you." The laughter faltered. Lucas blinked. "Wait, what?" She said simply, "I pray for everyone who mocks me. You don't have to believe in prayer for it to work." Silence fell, awkward, heavy. Then one of the guys snorted. "Creepy." The laughter returned, forced this time. They turned away, muttering as they left. But Lucas lingered. For the first time, he looked unsure. Emma walked past him, head bowed. Inside her room, she shut the door, leaned against it, and finally let her tears fall. Not from weakness, but from the deep ache of loving people who didn't want love. Later that night, she opened her Bible. Her phone buzzed again, another message from her father. "When they laugh, remember the cross." They laughed there too, but heaven never mocked back. She whispered, "Lord, help me remember." The verse she'd been meditating on that morning returned to her mind. "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." She knelt by her bedside. Her whispered prayers were steady now, each one softer than her pain, but stronger than her fear. "Bless them, Father, Lucas, the others, even Professor Cole. They don't know you yet. Show them the peace I found in you." As she prayed, the noise of the world seemed to fade, replaced by something gentle, radiant, alive. The next morning, Sarah found her sitting by the window, a cup of tea in her hands and sunlight on her face. "Didn't sleep much?" Sarah asked. Emma shook her head. "I did enough, but I think I finally understand something." "What?" Emma said softly, "That peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of Jesus in the middle of it." Outside, the laughter still echoed down the halls. But in Emma's heart, a deeper song had begun to rise. A song the world couldn't hear. A song that would one day silence the mockers completely. The campus was quieter that weekend, emptied by the exodus of students heading home or into the city. Emma stayed behind, pretending she had too much studying to do. But really, she couldn't face the stares and whispers anymore. Her dorm felt colder than usual. The radiator hummed softly, but the air was still. On her desk lay open textbooks she hadn't touched in hours. Her mind wandered instead through questions that wouldn't leave her alone. Why, God? Why does it hurt so much to love the way you asked us to? She whispered the thought aloud and felt it echo through the empty room like a prayer unanswered. Then, a knock. When she opened the door, Sarah stood there holding a small brown envelope. "This came for you," she said, smiling faintly. "Looks like another one from your dad." Emma's chest warmed a little. "Thanks." Sarah hesitated, watching her. "Are you okay, Em? You've been quiet lately." "I'm fine," Emma lied gently. "Just tired." When Sarah left, Emma sat on the bed and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was her father's familiar handwriting, slanted and strong. She unfolded the letter slowly. "My dearest Emma, I saw a sermon once where the preacher said, 'Grace is the loudest silence.' It means that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to argue or defend, but to love quietly when the world expects hate. Do you remember when you were little and a girl at Sunday school called you strange because you always prayed for your enemies? You came home crying, and your mother told you, 'Sweetheart, when people throw stones, turn them into altars.' Maybe that's what God is asking of you again, to turn this pain into prayer, this rejection into testimony. You were never called to be admired, Emma, only to be faithful. And one day, someone who mocked you will remember your kindness and find Christ through it. So keep shining, my girl. Grace never goes unnoticed in heaven. With love, always. Dad." Emma's vision blurred with tears. She pressed the letter to her chest and whispered, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you for knowing exactly what I needed to hear." The letter became her anchor. Every morning that week, she read a line before facing the day. When laughter followed her into the library, she remembered, "Grace is the loudest silence." When Lucas and his friends pointed at her Bible during lunch, she thought, "Turn the stones into altars." Slowly, the bitterness that had been threatening to take root began to soften into something else, something luminous. That Thursday, she passed Lucas in the hallway. He was laughing with his friends again, but this time she noticed something different. His laughter didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, church girl, prayed for us lately?" She stopped, turned, and smiled. Not a forced smile, but one that carried peace. Every day. His friends laughed uneasily, but Lucas just stared, speechless for a heartbeat too long. When he turned away, his expression was unreadable. That night, Emma placed her father's letter on her desk beside her Bible. The paper was already wrinkled from where her tears had fallen. She wrote back, "Dear Dad, you were right. Grace really is the loudest silence. It speaks when words can't. It doesn't make the pain disappear, but it changes what the pain means. I think God is asking me to love louder by speaking softer, to forgive deeper than feels fair, to let peace be my protest. Pray for me, because I'm learning that following Christ doesn't make life easier, just holier. With love, Emma." She folded the note, smiling through her tears. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and rhythmic against the window pane, like a lullaby from heaven. And for the first time in days, Emma slept peacefully, her father's words echoing gently in her dreams. "Turn the stones into altars." Morning light filtered through pale curtains, painting long golden stripes across Emma's room. The world outside looked peaceful, the kind of morning that promised calm. But inside her heart, a storm was brewing. The whisper of laughter had turned into a chorus. Someone had printed screenshots from the viral video and taped them across the campus bulletin board. One had her picture captioned, "God's favorite philosopher, now accepting miracles."
Beneath it, someone had drawn a cartoon of her kneeling in prayer while lightning struck behind her. Sarah tore one of the posters down, crumpling them in her fists. "This has gone too far, Emma. You can't just ignore this anymore. You need to report them." Emma stood silently beside her, staring at the cruel paper. Her throat tightened, but she only whispered, "No, it's fine." "Fine?" Sarah snapped. "They're humiliating you." Emma met her friend's eyes. "I know, but reporting them won't change their hearts. It'll just make them angrier." Sarah threw up her hands. "So what? You'll just let them keep doing this? Keep laughing at you like you don't feel anything?" Emma's calm cracked a little. "You think I don't feel it? Every word burns, Sarah. Every look, every whisper." Her voice trembled. "I go to class wondering if someone's recording me again. I walk through the halls praying not to cry where they can see me. But I keep remembering what Dad said. Turn the stones into altars." Sarah's anger softened, replaced with tears. "You're stronger than I am, Em. I don't think I could ever forgive people like that." Emma smiled faintly. "I'm not strong. I'm just held." But even the held can tremble. That evening, as rain hammered the windows, Emma sat on her bed clutching her Bible. Her thoughts ran wild, part prayer, part frustration. Why me, God? Why keep testing my patience? Why must love be so hard when hate is so easy? Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the page before her. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Her tears fell freely now. "Then make me strong in you, because I can't do this alone." Thunder answered, deep and distant, like heaven's heartbeat. Later that night, Sarah entered quietly, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. She said, "I made this for us. I figured prayer and sugar might help." Emma laughed weakly. "You're learning." They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, sipping in silence. The tension eased a little. After a moment, Sarah asked, "Do you ever wish you could just be normal? Blend in?" Emma's gaze drifted toward the rain-blurred window. "Sometimes, but then I remember what blending in would cost." "Your peace?" Sarah guessed. "My purpose." Sarah nodded, her eyes moist. "I want what you have, Em. That peace, that whatever it is that keeps you from falling apart." Emma smiled gently. "It's not mine to keep. It's his to give." Hours later, after Sarah had gone to bed, Emma found herself standing in front of the mirror. Her reflection looked tired, eyes red, shoulders slumped, but behind the exhaustion was something steady. Faith didn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looked like refusing to quit. She walked to her desk and opened her father's letter again. The words seemed to glow under the lamplight. "You were never called to be admired, Emma, only to be faithful." She pressed her hand against the paper and whispered, "Then faithful I'll be." At that same moment, across campus, Lucas was awake too. He was staring at the same viral video, the one that had made everyone laugh. Only this time, he wasn't laughing. He didn't know why, but something in her eyes during that moment, that trembling, defiant kindness, haunted him. He slammed his laptop shut and muttered under his breath, "Why won't she just hate me back?" But heaven was already answering the question.
The air was crisp that morning, sunlight glittering over wet pavements, still breathing the memory of last night's storm. Campus was slowly waking up, but the echoes of laughter about the praying girl hadn't died yet. Emma walked toward the library courtyard, clutching a folder of notes, eyes fixed ahead. She'd learned to walk through whispers as if they were wind, heard but not held. But she wasn't ready for who was waiting by the stone bench near the fountain. Lucas. He was leaning against the edge, phone in one hand, but when he saw her, he pocketed it nervously. His usual smirk was gone.
In its place was something uncertain. Emma froze, her pulse quickening. A dozen possible outcomes flashed in her mind. Another insult, another joke, another wound. But then he spoke. "Hey." Just that. One word. Rough, unsteady. She gave a cautious nod. "Hey." He shifted awkwardly. "Can we talk?" Emma hesitated. Her first instinct was to walk away, to protect what little peace she had left. But then, somewhere deep within, a softer voice whispered, "Love your enemies." She sighed quietly. "All right." They sat. The silence between them stretched, uneasy and thick. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting anywhere but her face. "I don't even know where to start." "Maybe the truth," she said gently. He gave a half laugh, bitter and small. "Yeah, the truth. That's not something I've been good at." Emma watched him closely. His jaw was tight, but his eyes, they weren't mocking anymore. They looked burdened. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he said finally. "The video, the posts, it was supposed to be a joke, just something to mess around with. But then people started sharing it, making memes, and I let them." Her chest tightened. "You could have stopped it." "I know," he said quietly, "and I didn't, because for some reason, seeing people laugh made me feel powerful." He swallowed hard, but it didn't last. It never does. Emma didn't respond right away. She looked down at her hands, the ones that had spent so many nights folded in prayer for people who didn't care to be forgiven. Finally, she said softly, "Why are you telling me this now?" He hesitated. "Because you didn't fight back." Her eyes lifted to his. "Would that have changed you?" He blinked, caught off guard. I don't know." She smiled faintly. "That's why I didn't. Hate multiplies faster than grace, Lucas. I didn't want to give it more ground." He exhaled slowly, leaning back against the bench. "You're either crazy or?" "Or?" she asked. "Or you actually believe all that?" "I do." He looked away, eyes glistening with something unspoken. "Must be nice." "To believe?" "To have something, someone who still stands when the world falls apart." She studied him for a long moment, hearing the weariness behind the sarcasm. Then she said softly, "You could have that too, you know." He scoffed, though not cruelly. "Me? After everything I've done? You think God would even listen?" "More than you think," she said. "He's been listening this whole time." Something flickered across his face, disbelief fighting with longing. "I don't know if I can believe that." He murmured. Emma smiled gently. "Then let me believe for you until you can." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The courtyard felt quieter, the morning air gentler, like the world itself had paused to listen. Finally, Lucas stood, his expression caught somewhere between shame and relief. "You're different, Emma. You really are." She rose too, her voice steady. "No, I'm just forgiven." He nodded slowly, then turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps. "For what it's worth." "I'm sorry." And for the first time, Emma didn't feel the sting of mockery in his words, only truth. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Thank you, Lord," as the fountain's water shimmered in sunlight like liquid grace.
Days passed, then weeks. For a while, peace seemed possible again. The storm of mockery quieted, replaced by murmurs of curiosity. Some whispered that Emma's kindness was an act. Others said she was a saint in disguise. She didn't bother to defend herself, only to keep walking, praying, breathing grace into a place that didn't want it. Even Lucas kept his distance, though sometimes he caught him watching her during class, not with mockery this time, but with the uneasy stare of a man haunted by conviction. But peace in the world always trembles before it's tested again.
It began one Monday morning when Emma arrived at the library and found the screen of her laptop flickering with a message. "We know who you really are." At first, she thought it was spam, until another message appeared from an unknown email. "Let's see how perfect the praying girl looks when everyone knows her secret." Her hands froze over the keyboard. There was no secret, not really, but whoever sent the message wasn't looking for truth. They wanted a target. By noon, it began. A new video surfaced online. This time, someone had spliced together clips from Emma's old vlog, a quiet channel she'd started years ago after her mother's death. In it, she'd shared vulnerable prayers, tearful reflections, even doubts about her faith during her darkest days. Now, all of it was edited out of context, painted to make her look like a hypocrite. The captions were cruel. "Preaches peace, cries in secret. The fake saint exposed." It spread like wildfire. When she walked into class, every conversation stopped. Screens glowed. People avoided her eyes. Sarah met her in the hallway, breathless. "Emma, don't look online, please." "I already did." "Who would do this?" Emma swallowed hard, forcing the words through the lump in her throat. "Someone who needs more love than anger." But even she could hear the tremor in her own voice. That night, her dorm was filled with silence, the kind that screams louder than words. She sat on the floor, knees drawn up, her Bible open beside her. "Lord, I forgave once. I tried to love them, but it keeps coming back. The pain, the laughter, the lies. How do I keep forgiving when they won't stop wounding me?" Her tears hit the open page, the story of Christ before his accusers. He opened not his mouth. She pressed her hand against the words and whispered, "Then help me to be still." The door opened softly. Sarah peeked in, her eyes red. "You don't have to do this alone, Em." Emma looked up with a weary smile. "I'm not really." Sarah sat beside her. "They're trying to break you." "I know." "Are you angry?" Emma thought for a long moment. "I'm heartbroken, but anger is just pain looking for someone to blame, and I don't want to feed it." Sarah sighed. "You sound like your father." Emma smiled faintly. "Then I must be doing something right." The next day, Emma met Lucas again, though this time he came looking for her. He found her in the chapel, sitting near the back pew, eyes closed, whispering a prayer. He hesitated at the door, guilt shadowing his face. "Emma." She turned, her expression calm but tired. "Lucas." He walked closer, his voice tight. "It wasn't me this time." "I know." He blinked, surprised. "You do?" "You already apologized once. That meant something." He sat beside her, running a hand over his face. "I wish I knew who did it. People think this is justice, but it's just cruelty wearing a mask." Emma's voice was soft. "That's what hate does. It pretends to be right until it forgets what truth feels like." He looked at her, eyes heavy. "Why don't you fight back?" "Because fighting to win isn't the same as standing to love." Lucas leaned back, exhaling shakily. "You know, when I first met you, I thought faith made people weak. And now?" He smiled faintly. "Now, I think maybe it's the only thing that keeps them standing." That night, as Emma walked back alone, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, just a single line. "You think faith will save you. Let's see when they all turn against you." She stopped beneath a flickering streetlight, the world humming quietly around her. Then she whispered, not in fear, but in quiet defiance, "Even if they do, I won't turn against you." And as she walked on, rain began to fall, soft, cleansing, like heaven itself was weeping with her. The university boardroom was cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the silence that filled it, sharp, clinical, watching. Emma sat at the long oak table, hands folded in her lap. Her palms were trembling, but her eyes stayed steady. Across from her sat Dean Whitmore, a stern woman in her 50s, flanked by 2 faculty members and a student representative. Their faces were unreadable. On the table lay printed screenshots, stills from the edited video that had torn through campus. The dean cleared her throat. "Miss Clarke, you've been called here because of recent concerns regarding your online behavior and the disruption it's caused within the student community." Emma nodded slowly. I understand. The dean's gaze was steady, not unkind, but heavy with authority. Several students claim your online presence violates our code of conduct. Some allege your comments are proselyting in nature. Emma met her eyes calmly. Those videos were never meant for anyone here. They were personal reflections. Prayers, really. I made them years ago, before my scholarship, before all of this. Another professor leaned forward, his tone skeptical. But you made them public? Yes, she said, because I thought maybe someone who felt alone might find comfort in them. He raised an eyebrow. Comfort? You mean conversion? The question stung, but she held her ground. No, sir, I meant compassion. Silence followed, long and thick. Finally, Dean Whitmore sighed. Miss Clarke, I want to believe you, but the situation has escalated. There are protests online, demands to revoke your scholarship. Some say your presence creates a hostile environment for students who don't share your beliefs. Emma's chest tightened. She wanted to defend herself, to cry out that love could never be hostile, but she remembered the stillness she'd prayed for. Dean Whitmore, I've never forced my faith on anyone. I've only tried to live it. If that offends some, I can only pray they'll one day understand it's not meant to divide, only to heal. For a moment, the dean's expression softened. You're remarkably composed, Miss Ward. Most students would be furious. Emma gave a faint smile. I was once, but anger never led me anywhere good. The dean studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. We'll review this case and inform you of our decision. Emma stood. Thank you for hearing me. Outside, the hallway buzzed with whispers. Phones tilted, faces turned. Lucas was waiting by the end of the corridor, watching her walk out of the boardroom with quiet resolve. How bad was it? He asked. Bad enough, she said softly. He looked like he wanted to punch something, or someone. This isn't right. You didn't do anything wrong. I spoke about love. People just heard conviction instead. He clenched his jaw. I should have said something. When they started talking about you online, I should have defended you. Emma touched his arm gently. You're saying something now. That's what matters. He looked at her hand, then at her eyes, and his voice lowered. You're not scared? She hesitated, then whispered. Of course I am, but faith isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love through it. Lucas exhaled, shaking his head. You really believe that, don't you? With all that I am. That evening, Emma returned to her dorm. The sky outside was a dull gray, the horizon heavy with rain. She sat at her desk, watching the clouds gather, and wrote in her journal. When they accuse me falsely, I will answer with the truth. When they take my peace, I will plant prayer in its place. When they turn away, I will still love, because he loved first. Her phone buzzed, another unknown message. She hesitated before opening it. They're holding a protest tomorrow, against you. Her heart skipped. She closed her eyes and whispered, then let them see peace standing still. The next day, the campus quad was alive with noise. Dozens of students gathered, some holding signs mocking her faith, others demanding freedom from fanaticism. And through the crowd, Emma walked, alone, unguarded, calm. Her steps were measured, her eyes clear. She didn't speak. She didn't defend. She simply moved through the sea of noise like a single flame refusing to go out in the wind. Some jeered, others fell silent as she passed. A few even lowered their signs, unsure why the sight of her unbroken kindness made them feel uneasy. Lucas watched from afar, fists clenched, heart torn. He wanted to intervene, but something told him not to. This wasn't his battle to fight. It was hers and God's. Emma stopped at the fountain, the same place where the first mockery had begun. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Rain began to fall, light at first, then steady. The crowd scattered, their laughter dissolving into silence. Emma stayed still, drenched but unmoved. And for a brief, holy moment, even the campus seemed to hold its breath.
The rain lingered through the night. By morning, puddles mirrored the gray sky, and the campus felt strangely hushed, like the world itself was holding its breath after something sacred had passed through it. Emma Clarke walked across the courtyard, her soaked shoes squelching faintly against the pavement. The protest signs from the day before lay forgotten near the fountain, their bold words bleeding into watercolor blurs. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't angry. She was simply still. Sarah ran to meet her halfway, an umbrella in hand. "You could have gotten sick out there." Emma smiled faintly. "I'm all right." "All right," Sarah huffed, lowering her voice. "You stood alone in front of half the campus while they shouted at you." Emma's tone was soft, almost tender. Sometimes silence speaks louder than argument. Sarah stared at her for a moment, then sighed. "I don't know how you do it." "Neither do I. I just know who helps me do it." By noon, whispers began to shift. Some students had recorded her standing in the rain, whispering that quiet prayer, "Father, forgive them." The video spread again, but this time, it didn't ignite mockery. It stirred something else. The comments were different now. She didn't even fight back. How can someone stay that calm? Maybe we were wrong about her. In classrooms, cafeterias, and dorms, the tone began to change. Not at once, but softly, like dawn creeping over a dark landscape. Even the dean noticed. She called Lucas into her office that week, her tone more curious than stern. "You've known Miss Clarke for a while, haven't you?" Lucas hesitated. "Yeah, kind of." She studied him. "You were one of the first to participate in the online incident, weren't you?" He looked down. "Yes, ma'am." Her voice softened. "And what do you think of her now?" Lucas met her eyes, the weight of guilt and wonder mingling in his gaze. "I think she's everything we pretend to be. Brave, kind, unbroken." The dean nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes truth doesn't shout. It simply stands. Later that week, Lucas found Emma sitting under a tree by the edge of campus, sketching in a notebook. The sun was low, turning the wet grass into fields of gold. He hesitated before sitting beside her. "You probably know that everyone's talking about you again." She looked up with a faint smile. "I guessed." This time, they're not laughing. Emma set her pencil down, tilting her head. "And how do you feel about that?" He gave a small, self-conscious laugh, like the world just flipped upside down. "Yesterday, I was mocking you. Today, I'm defending you." "People change," she said gently. "No, Emma, you changed me." She smiled, not proud, but grateful. Maybe Grace did. Lucas's voice grew quieter. "I watched that video, the one in the rain. I don't know how you did it." "I didn't." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I wanted to run, but I remembered what he did for me, how he stood when I would have fallen. So I stayed." Lucas's eyes glistened. "I don't think I could ever have that kind of faith." She turned to him, her voice steady. "You already do. You just haven't trusted it yet." He looked at her, the mask of sarcasm completely gone. "Emma, I'm sorry. Not just for before, but for everything. You didn't deserve any of it." She reached out, resting her hand lightly on his arm. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving.
It's about freedom, yours and mine." He swallowed hard, unable to speak. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma stood once more by the fountain, now empty and quiet. The air carried the scent of wet stone and new beginnings. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you for turning the storm into a seed." Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned to see Lucas, Sarah, and a few others, students who had once laughed, now standing silently with her. No one spoke. They didn't have to. The silence was full, not of scorn, but of reverence. And for the first time in months, Emma felt the weight lift. Not because the world had changed, but because love had.
Autumn crept quietly over the campus. Leaves turned amber and gold, drifting down like fragile whispers from heaven. The fountain that once echoed with mockery now reflected calm skies, and the laughter that once haunted Emma Clarke had been replaced with something gentler: respect, curiosity, even admiration. But peace, she had learned, is rarely permanent. It's borrowed, a breath before the next storm. It came on a Thursday. The air was heavy with the smell of rain, and Emma was shelving books in the library when her phone buzzed with a call from home. It was her aunt's number. "Emma?" The voice on the other end trembled. "It's your father." Emma froze. "What happened?" A pause. Then the words that would echo for weeks. "He collapsed. They did everything they could." The world dimmed. Her fingers loosened. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a hollow sound. That night, she sat alone in the chapel. Candles flickered softly, throwing golden halos across the wooden pews. Outside, the wind wept through the trees. Emma stared at the cross, eyes dry, voice gone. The girl who had once prayed for her enemies now found herself unable to speak at all. "Why now?" she whispered hoarsely. "Why when everything was just starting to heal?" Her Bible lay open beside her, but she couldn't read the words. They blurred behind a veil of sorrow. Sarah found her there hours later, curled on the pew, grief like armor around her. Without a word, Sarah sat beside her and took her hand. "He's with him," Sarah said gently. "I know, but I still wish he were here with me." Tears finally came, quiet, shaking, human. Days passed in a haze. Emma traveled home for the funeral, a small gathering under gray skies. The church smelled of lilies and rain. Her father's favorite hymn played softly, "It is well with my soul." As the congregation sang, Emma's voice broke on the first verse. But as she listened to the words, she realized something profound. Peace didn't mean the absence of pain. It meant the presence of purpose even within it. After the service, she stood by the grave long after everyone else had left. The air was cold, her breath visible. She knelt, fingers brushing the fresh soil. "You taught me to love without limits. Now I'll try to live without fear." A small breeze lifted her hair, gentle, like a touch from heaven. When she returned to campus, the world looked the same, but she didn't. Her eyes carried both loss and light, a strange, holy mixture that drew people without them knowing why. In class, students who once mocked her now greeted her softly. Some even asked if she was all right. Others began slipping notes into her locker. "Thank you for standing firm. Your peace helped me find mine." And Lucas, he stayed closer now, though careful not to intrude. He walked her to class, shared coffee during study breaks, and listened more than he spoke. One afternoon, he found her sitting beneath the same tree where they'd first spoken in peace. Her sketchbook lay open on her lap, a charcoal drawing of a candle glowing inside a storm. He sat beside her. "That's beautiful," he said quietly. "It's called The Light Beneath the Ashes," she replied.
He tilted his head. That's how you see faith, isn't it? Not as something bright and perfect, but something that survives the fire. Emma smiled faintly. Fire doesn't destroy light. It refines it. He nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to understand. She turned to him, her voice soft but certain. You don't need to understand it all. Just start believing that it's real. That evening, as she returned to her dorm, she paused at her window. The sunset painted the sky in molten gold and violet, the same colors her mother used to love. Emma whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for the ashes and the light." And for the first time since her father's passing, she smiled. Not because the pain was gone, but because grace had made a home inside it.
The auditorium buzzed with low chatter. Rows of students filled the seats, notebooks in hand, eyes half interested as the faculty prepared for Faith and Resilience Week. It was an annual event, but this year's theme, Finding Light in the Dark, had stirred something deeper across campus. Emma hadn't planned to attend, much less to speak. She had come only because Professor Adrian Cole asked her to help with event setup. But just as she was arranging the microphones, he turned to her with that kind, knowing look of his. "Miss Clarke," he said softly, "I've watched how you've carried yourself this past year, with grace, humility, and courage. I think your story could help others far more than you realize." Emma blinked. "My story?" "Yes," he said. "Would you share it tomorrow? Not as a sermon, but as truth, as someone who found faith in fire." Her throat tightened. "Professor, I don't think I could. I'm not a speaker." He smiled. Neither was Moses, but the message mattered more than the mouth that carried it. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Rain pattered gently against the window, and her room was lit only by the golden glow of her bedside lamp. Her Bible lay open to Isaiah 43:2. "When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned." Her mother's bookmark still rested between the pages. Emma touched it gently and whispered, "If you really want me to speak, give me the courage to do it your way." Outside, lightning flashed across the horizon, not fierce, but beautiful, a silent confirmation. The next day, the auditorium was full. The air smelled faintly of coffee and new beginnings. When Professor Adrian Cole called her name, Miss Emma Clarke, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Some faces were skeptical, others were just curious, a few quietly supportive. Emma walked up to the stage, her heart hammering, her palms cold. She stood behind the podium, eyes sweeping across the audience. For a heartbeat, words refused to come. Then she took a deep breath and began, her voice trembling at first, then steadying. "I used to think faith meant never being afraid, but I learned it's what you hold on to when you are." The room fell silent. "I was mocked once for believing in a God I couldn't prove, for praying when it made no sense. I tried to hide, tried to fight back, but something inside me whispered, 'Love them anyway.'" She paused, eyes glistening. "When my father died, I wanted to give up. I told God I couldn't carry it anymore. But grief didn't break me. It showed me what grace really is. It's not the absence of pain, it's the strength to choose kindness when your heart is still bleeding." Someone sniffled in the back row. Emma continued, her tone growing stronger. "I don't stand here because I'm strong. I stand here because I'm loved, even at my weakest. And that love, that's what changed everything." When she finished, the auditorium was still. Then, slowly, applause began. It wasn't loud or showy, but it was genuine, a quiet acknowledgement of something sacred.
Afterwards, students came up to her in clusters. Some wanted to thank her, others wanted to talk about doubt, about loss, about faith they'd buried under fear. Lucas waited until the end. When he finally stepped forward, his expression was unreadable, eyes shimmering. That was... He paused, searching for the right word. Real. Emma smiled faintly. It had to be. He noted. I used to think believing made people weak. Now I see it's the opposite. It takes strength to love people who break you. It's not our strength. It's his. Later that evening, Emma returned to the chapel, the place where her story began. She lit a single candle, its glow flickering against the wooden walls. Thank you. For the fire. For the refining. For the grace to love them still. As she prayed, the candle's light wavered, and for a fleeting moment she thought she saw her father's reflection in the flame, smiling. That night, a message arrived in her inbox from a student who hadn't spoken to her in months. I was one of those who laughed at you last year, but after hearing you today, I want to know the God you speak of. Emma closed her eyes, tears falling freely. The fire that once threatened to consume her had become her greatest gift, the very light that led others home.
The campus had grown quieter as winter crept in. Frost kissed the windows each morning, and the trees stood bare against gray skies. Inside the library, the warmth of lamplight and the scent of coffee filled the air. Emma found herself at peace, or so she thought, until the past walked through the door. She was studying at her usual corner table when the library doors opened. A hush followed the sound of hesitant footsteps. Emma looked up, and the air left her lungs. It was Tyler Grant, the same Tyler who had mocked her in front of hundreds, who had led the cruel jokes, who had once sneered, "Where's your God now, Miss Clarke?" But now, he looked nothing like the boy who once thrived on cruelty. His face was thinner, eyes shadowed, shoulders slumped beneath the weight of something heavy. He hesitated at the entrance, scanning the room, until his gaze found hers. Emma's pulse quickened. Tyler started toward her, every step careful, uncertain. When he reached her table, his voice came out low and hoarse. "Emma, can we talk?" She said nothing for a moment, her heart caught between memory and mercy. Finally, she nodded. "Sit." They sat across from each other, silence thick between them. Tyler stared at his hands, then forced himself to speak. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to say I'm sorry." Emma's throat tightened. "I was angry back then. At everything. My parents were getting divorced, I was failing classes, and you," he swallowed hard, "you seemed to have peace when everyone else was drowning. I hated you for that. I wanted to break it." She listened quietly, no anger, only the ache of understanding. "I saw your speech last week," he said finally. "You said love doesn't stop, even when it's mocked. I realized you were talking about people like me." Tears glistened in his eyes. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just needed you to know I'm trying to change." Emma looked at him for a long time. The boy who had once been her tormentor, now stripped of pride and pretense. "You're right," she said softly. "You don't deserve forgiveness." Tyler's face fell. "But neither do I," she continued. "That's what makes grace, grace." He looked up, startled. "I won't pretend the pain didn't matter," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly. "You hurt me deeply, but God never stopped loving you, and neither can I." Her eyes softened. "You're forgiven, Tyler. Not because you earned it, but because he forgave me first." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Tyler broke, shoulders shaking, tears spilling freely.
Years of guilt washed out in silence. Emma reached across the table and placed a hand on his. "You're not alone anymore. Start there." After he left, Emma remained seated, tears glistening but peaceful. She realized that forgiveness wasn't a single act, it was a continual surrender, the letting go of what hurt, again and again, until only love remained. That evening, she wrote in her journal, "Grace doesn't erase the past, it redeems it." A few days later, a message appeared on the university bulletin board, an anonymous note that read, "To the girl who chose grace over revenge, thank you for reminding me that God still finds the lost." Emma smiled faintly. She didn't need to know who wrote it. The truth had already done its work. That Sunday, she returned to the chapel once more. The stained glass shimmered with morning light, painting her face in soft color. As she knelt in prayer, she whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for teaching me the hardest part of love." And in that moment, she realized forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was the purest reflection of divine strength.
Morning light spilled across the chapel floor like liquid gold. Dust motes floated gently in the beams, suspended in the hush of early prayer. The world outside was just waking, but inside, Emma Clarke knelt in stillness, her hands folded, her heart unguarded. It had been months since that day in the library, months since she had faced her past and chosen mercy instead of resentment. And though life hadn't grown easier, it had grown clearer. Peace was no longer something distant or fragile. It lived in her now, steady, unshakable, like the rhythm of her heartbeat. Her life had changed in quiet, unexpected ways. Students who once mocked her now joined her in the morning prayer circles. A few of them, including Tyler, began volunteering at the campus outreach program, helping those in need. Lucas, once skeptical, now led worship at the weekly fellowship. Even Professor Adrian Cole said one day, with a twinkle in his eye, "You've turned this campus upside down, Miss Clarke, though I suppose heaven would call it right side up." Emma only smiled. She wasn't trying to start a movement, she was just trying to love well. And somehow, that was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma walked along the river path that wound behind a campus. The air smelled faintly of pine and rain. She paused by the water's edge, where ripples caught the fading light like threads of fire. It was here, she realized, where everything had begun. In brokenness, in fear, in isolation, but it was also where something greater had been born. Faith. Not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet, enduring flame that refused to die, even when mocked, even when grief tried to smother it. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you for not wasting my pain." That weekend, Emma was invited to speak again, this time at a nearby youth retreat. The room was filled with young faces, some curious, some burdened, some visibly wounded by the world's cruelty. She told them her story, not as a heroine, but as a witness. She spoke of the days she questioned everything, of the laughter that once cut deep, of the mother she lost, and a peace she found in the ashes. When she finished, a hush fell. Then one by one, the students stood, not clapping, but crying, praying, embracing. Later, one girl approached her, no more than 16, eyes red but glowing. "I didn't think God could still love someone like me," she said softly. Emma smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. He never stopped. That night, Emma sat alone by the bonfire. Sparks rose into the twilight, vanishing into the stars. Lucas came to sit beside her, silent for a while before saying,
Do you ever wonder why he chose you to go through all that pain? Emma looked into the sire. Maybe because he knew I'd finally stop fighting and let him turn it into something beautiful. Lucas nodded slowly. You've changed this place, Emma. Emma smiled faintly. No, he did. I just stopped standing in the way. As the fire dimmed, Emma opened her journal one last time. The pages were filled with prayers, tears, lessons, and light. On the final page, she wrote, I once begged God to take the storm away, but now I see He made me the calm within it. Months later, graduation day arrived. The bell tower rang across the campus lawn, and sunlight poured over the crowd like a blessing. Emma stood among her peers, her heart swelling with quiet gratitude. As names were called, she spotted Tyler helping an elderly professor with his wheelchair. Lucas waved from the worship tent, guitar slung over his shoulder. Everywhere she looked, fragments of grace had taken root, proof that love really does leave ripples. When her name was announced, Emma Grace Clarke, she stepped forward, her diploma warm in her hands, and as she looked out at the sea of faces, a thought settled deep within her. The world hadn't changed because she spoke louder. It had changed because she chose to love when silence was easier. That evening, the chapel bells tolled softly. Emma lingered one last time by the altar, lit a single candle, and whispered into the stillness, Thank you for every flame, every storm, every soul you let me love. The candle's light flickered, bright, steady, unafraid. And as Emma walked out into the dawn, the sky broke open with color. It was not the end of her story, but the beginning of countless others touched by one woman's quiet, steadfast faith.
Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, let it remind you grace still lives in the quiet places. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of faith, love, and light. Written by PK, narrated by Whisperglass Stories.